You know, Bryan Cranston seems to keep finding himself in these drug lord situations, alright? He is getting too old for this. The Infiltrator. The Infiltrator is based on a true story and is starring Bryan Cranston and John Leguizamo, two of my absolute favorite actors. They play two US Customs officials that go undercover to infiltrate Pablo Escobar's money laundering drug organization. This was set during the time period where the war against drugs was extremely important, and they discovered that there's some extreme money laundering happening throughout the US that's allowing all this cocaine to be entered into the country. There's a whole bunch of conspiracy about what's going on, how is the cocaine entering the country, how is so much money leaving the country. A whole bunch of major banks around the world and in the US are involved, and a whole bunch of higher-ups within Pablo Escobar's drug ring are just flying under the radar. So I'm going to come out and say that I really enjoyed this movie, and honestly, I enjoyed it a lot more than I was anticipating. This movie was able to grab my attention and hold on to it the entire way through. Bryan Cranston is fantastic in this movie. He has a lot of great dramatic moments, but then a lot of hilarious moments. And a lot of credit has to be given to the writing in this movie. The writing was excellent. The dialogue in this movie and among all of the characters is great and just so interesting and entertaining. There was this awesome balance of intense drama and then some dark, buddy humor throughout the movie that I really enjoyed. Every prominent character in this movie felt unique and for the most part all had a moment to shine. And trust me, there are a lot of characters in this movie. Usually I hate movies with a ridiculous amount of characters, and although this movie is confusing at the beginning when they're introducing them all, as Bryan Cranston's character goes through and starts becoming friends with all of these drug lords, you also get to know them better. So as the movie progresses, it does become easier to understand these characters and to distinguish among them all. I also have to give major recognition to John Leguizamo. He's been one of my favorite actors and biggest inspirations for a long time now, and seeing him in such a great role was so much fun to watch. I mean, he is just so charismatic and funny and just outright badass in this movie. The only thing I wish was that he was in it more, and the only other thing I wish was that he would actually get some more roles besides the stereotypical Latino sidekick. He's just so much better than that, and he can do so much more. He just needs to be recognized for the talent that he actually is. You know, halfway through this movie, I had an interesting thought. As things started to ramp up and people started to get whacked, I realized that this movie was basically a complete reverse of Scarface. And I mean reverse in the sense that we're witnessing all of these crazy events and crazy characters similar to what we saw in Scarface, except through the eyes of the undercover agent and government. You know, after I got that thought in my head, I love this movie even more. We haven't gotten a great drug lord or mob-like or gangster movie in quite some time now. So seeing a movie like this that felt so old school was a nice change. I think the last movie that I remember that at least tried to get this old school feeling going was Gangster Squad, and that movie. One thing I'm sure will turn a lot of people off about this movie is that the marketing is making this movie seem more and more like an action movie than a drama, and that's not what it is at all. The name alone is making it sound like Bryan Cranston is just kicking down Pablo Escobar's door and is like, I am the one who infiltrates. My God, that was bad. But that's not what this movie is at all. If you're looking for an action movie, this is not the movie for you. There are some great action sequences in this movie, but they are so few and far between regardless of them being so well done. This movie is more about building the relationships between the undercover agents and all of the drug lords. And in a way, it kind of shows the human side of all of them instead of just victimizing them the entire time. You see just how difficult this job may be when they have to ultimately betray the people that accepted them as family. And while all these relationships are being built and all these circumstances are changing, the tension is heightening, and it's heightening fast. This movie is intense and suspenseful consistently throughout. Now, the biggest issues with this movie do come from the pacing. I'm someone that does love long movies that take their time to effectively establish characters and relationships and plot, but there are multiple moments in this movie where things just dragged on. There are a lot of scenes that are just visual exposition that could have been easily cut out and nothing would have really changed. It would have remedied the runtime being a little longer than it should have. I also didn't really care for Bryan Cranston having a family that just wanted him to stay home and retire, but he felt so convicted to just take that one last job. Usually when a movie takes a character and puts them in that situation where they feel so compelled to do that last job, they usually place them in some extreme danger that has them thinking, you know, I really shouldn't have taken this job. But there's never really any extreme danger that gets placed on Bryan Cranston or on his family that makes the family even really matter. Everything else in the movie is so much more interesting and so much more important that they could have easily cut out the family or at least rewritten it in a way that made them relevant. That's not to say that the moments with the family aren't good. It's just that they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And my personal biggest issue with this movie is that the advertising and marketing for this movie is making it seem like there's going to be this massive showdown between Bryan Cranston and Pablo Escobar. And I assure you, that is not what this movie is. Bryan Cranston sees Pablo Escobar once in passing, and Pablo Escobar doesn't even say anything. And honestly, I wouldn't have even known if it was Pablo Escobar if they weren't like, hey man, just so you know, that was Pablo Escobar. What? Really? That was Pablo Escobar? What are we doing? That's exactly what they did. And if they didn't do that, I wouldn't have known that was Pablo Escobar. But this is an old school drug crime drama with some great performances all around from a stellar supporting cast, interesting scenarios, and even better leads. I personally knew I was going to love this movie, but I did not expect to love it this much. And for all these reasons, I'm going to give The Infiltrator an 8 out of 10. The Infiltrator. Have you seen it? Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section below. And while you're at it, let me know what your favorite crime or drug movie is, if that's a category of movie. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. It truly does mean a lot. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you want to stick around for some more movie reviews, hey, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one.